Hello and welcome to the Liar's Bench podcast. I'm your host, William Ritter. Today, we'll feature a memory from our house storyteller, Gary Carden, and also a little music from me. But just as a quick note, we'd love to feature the music and talents of other regional performers, so drop us a line at liarsbenchpodcast.podbean.com. This is a very old song. I could spend several episodes delving into the history of the Reuben song family, which includes the classic fiddle breakdown Train 45, Ruby Are You Mad at Your Man, Hetty West 500 Miles, Reuben's Train, and Fiddlin' John Carson's 900 Miles. My old professor C.C. Conway lists Reuben as one of the essential black banjo pieces. Al Nomack suggested that it may have stemmed from the experience of African-American train engineers that worked on the rail lines during Reconstruction. When Reconstruction ended, the engineers were kicked off their trains wherever they happened to be at the time, even if it was 900 miles away from home. Now, from what I've heard, murder podcasts are all the rage. There's certainly a deep reservoir of folklore and stories around that topic. As a preface to this true story, you should know that Gary Carden's father was murdered when Gary was 18 months old. That event hovers in the background of many of his personal stories and plays, including this one, about a young boy, bullies, and justice.
After my father was murdered by a local drunk, I was about 18 months old, I think. And my mother went to Knoxville on the Trailway bus. She had ambitions. She thought she'd get a job, come back and get me, and we would live in Knoxville. And she would be a secretary to somebody. Well, that didn't happen. She didn't come back. And so I lived with my grandparents, and I remember sitting on the porch with my grandfather one day when Griff Middleton turned in the driveway, and I worshiped Griff Middleton. He was like Superman to me. And he's a good friend of my grandfather's. He's the local sheriff. He would one day die up in Little Canada, shot down by a bootlegger. But on this day, he was Griff Middleton, and oh my, he looked so grand. And that coat that he wore and that badge, and he walked over in the yard. He's laughing all the way, and he sat down on the edge of the porch, and he and my grandfather cracked jokes at each other for a while, and then all of a sudden Griff Middleton said, Arthur, let me tell you why I'm here. I know you got a gun in there. I want you to go in there and get it and bring it out here and give it to me. And my granddaddy didn't even hesitate. He got up and went in the house, got in the big old wardrobe, same place that Granny kept her egg money and the hot water bottle. And he came out with that pistol. I think it was a .45. But he came back and gave it to Griff Middleton. And Griff said, thank you, Arthur. Now I'll bring it back in a little while. Now let me tell you why I ask you to give it to me. They let Cloud out of prison this morning. Yeah. He served 7 years, and I know you wanted him dead, but that didn't happen. He got pardoned, and he's down somewhere around Andrews or Murphy now. Condition of his parole was he'd never come in this county again. So you're not going to run into him, Arthur. You're not going to see him on the street. Now you just need to get on with your life. You hear me? Okay, Arthur, I'll see you. I'll be back directly. And he got in his car and drove away, and my granddaddy sat there a long time, staring out at the Balsam Mountains, and then finally he said, Darnell, look at me. What have we got here? Huh? Let's see. We've got an orphan. That's you. You don't have a mother or a father. And then, of course, there's me. I sold all my land in Macon County trying to keep that guy in prison that's out and gone now. And that guy's parents sold all their land to get him out. And they were finally successful, and so he's living someplace down like Andrews or Murphy someplace. And then we got 2 rich lawyers. I tell you, Garnell, there's something wrong with a system of justice like that. I've come to the conclusion, I've learned it the hard way, I guess. The only justice you get in this life is what you get for yourself. And he got up and went in the house. Well, for the longest time he carried that pistol in the hopes that he would see Cloud Morgan on the street in Silva and that he would just smack out shoot him right there. But that didn't happen. Life went on, as it will. But there came a time when I was 12 and I was riding the bus home every day that I got, they call it bullying now, I understand. But there was 2 guys that waylaid me every day on the bus, and I was a runny little fella anyway. And as quick as I got on that bus, they dragged me into that middle seat. And there was never anybody sitting on it, and they put me down on that seat. And the fat one sat on top of me, and the other one slapped my jaws until my nose bled, and then they threw my books out the window, threw my sweater out, landed in a briar patch. They did this over and over every day. I had that to look forward to. Well, the bus stopped up in Rhodes Cove, and those 2 guys got out and started walking down Love Avenue. Then the bus came on down to my granddaddy's house, and I got out, and I had to go pick my books up. I had to get my sweater out of the briar patch, and I looked up, and those 2 guys were standing up there on the top of the hill laughing. I was funny. They got a kick out of watching me get my books out of the ditch. And the fat one, he sort of cruised over to the edge of the road, and he hollered at me, put his hand up around his mouth, and he says, "See ya tomorrow, Gary." They thought that was funny. Oh, yeah, tomorrow. And I thought about that every day for what seemed like an eternity. I had that to look forward to get on the bus. And standing there in the road, I thought about what my granddaddy said, you know. The only justice that you get in this life is what you get for yourself. And so I went in the house and got my granddaddy's Mossberg 22. Oh, it was a pretty thing. But I knew where it was. It was in the closet behind the clothes. And I went back out on the porch, and there those two guys were still laughing and waving at me. And I cut up with that 22. I remember thinking, shoot a little high because the bullet will fall. That's a good long ways up there. And so I shot twice. Kabam! Kabam! And those two guys fell. Fell like a sack of oats. I thought for a moment I'd killed them. It didn't bother me. I was 12. Maybe I didn't have a sense of what a human life was. Or maybe I was just bad clear through. Who knows? But then I saw the broom sage moving along the road, and I knew they were crawling. I might have hit one, but they were alive. So I put the 22 back in the closet where it belonged, and I went about my business, doing what I always did in the afternoon, listening to the radio and listening to my radio drama people like Jack Armstrong and the Lone Ranger. But long late in the afternoon, I saw Griff Middleton's car turn in the driveway. My granddaddy was sitting on the front porch, reading the Grit. He looked up and saw, there he was, Griff Middleton. And my granddaddy got up and walked out to the car and got in the car with him, and they had this right animated conversation. They were really talking about something. I thought it was probably me. And then my granddaddy got out of the car, and Griff backed out in a little circle and drove away down the road. And my granddaddy came back, sat in his rocking chair on the porch for a good while, and finally he said, Gary Neal, I need to tell you something. Listen, son, when people mistreat you, you can't kill them. That's just not done. If people treat you poorly or do bad stuff to you, listen, you just tell me about that. And I said, no, wait now, Granddaddy. Great, Papa. You said the only justice that we ever got in this life was what we got for ourselves. Now, didn't you? And he smiled. And he said, I said that, didn't I?
Gary's grandfather went on to tell him, in no uncertain terms, that killing people just wasn't done, though I think he must have admired his grandson's gumption. Like I always say when I sing a bloody old murder ballad, this song describes violence, but it doesn't condone it. Well, that rounds out our show today. We'll leave you with something a little upbeat. Feast Here Tonight is a bluegrass standard, and I love that song. This version, though, is a little different, and it comes from a Western North Carolina musician called J.E. Maynor. J.E. was a hoot, and recorded extensively with such luminaries as Snuffy Jenkins, Wade Maynor, and Steve Ledford. I tried to sound a little J.E. Maynory on the fiddle. Enjoy. I hope you have a wonderful day, and be good to each other.
There's a rabbit in the log, and ain't got no dog. How will I get him, Lordy knows? How will I get him, Lordy knows? Well, I'll get me a briar and I'll twist it in his hair. That's how I'll get him, Lordy knows. That's how I'll get him, Lordy knows. I'm going down the track with my chickens on my back, and my clothes and my shoes are nearly gone. And my clothes and my shoes are nearly gone. I'll get me a sprout and I'll twist the rabbit out. Yeah, that's how I'll get him, Lordy knows. That's how I'll get him, Lordy knows. There's an old farm shed just a few miles ahead, and that's where I'll rest my wearied bones. That's where I'll rest my wearied bones.